Well, let's move on to Bayern Munich on the pod. They clinched a 10th league title in a row at the weekend, but as Kit Holden has written for The Athletic, it's not felt like a successful season for Bayern. Kit joins us now. Just on why it hasn't felt like a successful season, that's mainly down to going out of the Champions League to Villarreal, is it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, after 10 years, every title feels a little bit flatter than the last anyway. But yeah, as you say, the Champions League is definitely the prism which Bayern kind of view their season through every year. And it's not that they expect to win that title every year, but it's one thing if you lose the final or the semi-final to Liverpool or Real Madrid, and it's another thing if you go out in the quarters to Villarreal. And so that did put a dampener on everything. I think we saw on Saturday there was a sort of sense of relief in the stadium because the last 2 weeks have just been so gloomy in Munich after that defeat.
And relations between fans and club and players is still fine, is it? I mean, we're not at a Paris Saint-Germain mutinous, win the title, get out of the stadium, don't celebrate with the players kind of thing stage.
No, and it's even a lot more healthy than it was a couple of years ago when Niko Kovac was winning the title by the skin of his teeth in 2019, and there was a sense there that quite a lot broken down in the relationship between club and fans and players. But now it's different. I think there is a faith that Nagelsmann is still the right guy to kind of build something there. But there is this is an under-par season, and it's less than a lot of people expected, and so there is a lot more pressure, I think, than perhaps there was last year.
What's the feeling within, and as I always say, this is a massive generalization, what's the feeling of fans of other clubs and other clubs in general that even in an under-par season they cruise to a title?
I mean, it's difficult. I think Dortmund, for example, often talk about the financial gap and the fact that the way they see it, there's a bigger gap between them and Bayern financially than there is between them and Greater Fürth at the bottom of the league. I think that's obviously true, and it does help Bayern. But I think there's also kind of a deeper problem in the Bundesliga at the moment that Dortmund themselves also have now a very successful model. They've had that for the last 10 years. They're bringing up these players like Haaland and Jadon Sancho, and that keeps them in the top four. It doesn't really, because it's a business model that doesn't rely on winning the title. It relies on finishing in the top four and selling the brand as a plucky young club, bringing up young players. It doesn't motivate them to really attack the title. It means that they buy the other club's players in the same way that Bayern do. And so the whole league has got a little bit more fossilized than it was maybe 10 years ago when you had every few years of Wolfsburg or Stuttgart or Bremen coming up and challenging Bayern.
How does it change? Does it change?
I think essentially, I mean, I'm always an optimist, and I do think there's a chance every year for a team to do it. It needs a team that, unlike Dortmund, who kind of churn over their squad every few years, it needs a team to have a stable base and a team that has grown over 4 or 5 years. I think Leipzig have that at the moment. I think it'd be really interesting to see how they do next season, because under Domenico Tedesco, in the second half of the season since Jesse Marsch left, they've been a very, very strong side. They've looked very stable, have a very clear direction. And if they can hold on to players like Christopher and Nkunku this summer, then I think they really could be a big threat to Bayern next year.
It needs something, though, doesn't it? Because there will come a point where Bundesliga will externally worry about the eyes on them. And I'm by no means a barometer, right? But I feel like I've watched a lot more Italian football this season than I have Bundesliga football, because actually we're in a really quite exciting title race in Serie A, and until Napoli lost at the weekend, it was probably 3-way. It's probably 2-way now between both Milan clubs. There comes, everything can be cyclical, but less eyes will be on the Bundesliga if Bayern go to 11, 12, 13. And if Haaland leaves that league.
Yeah, I mean, I think Haaland leaving is perhaps less of a worry, because there will always be with Dortmund the next player who comes up, whether it's Koku or Jamie Byner-Gittens or whoever it is coming up and exciting people. But Bayern's dominance is definitely a problem, and we've seen this year the debates about how to break it. We've seen ideas like introducing playoffs discussed, and Bayern even being open to that. We've seen even more discussion about the 50+1 rule and whether we can reform that in order to get more investment into the league and a bit more money to make clubs like Dortmund and Gladbach more competitive.
That's huge, isn't it? I mean, that's a real debate at the heart of football philosophy. to be honest with you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think bottom line is most German fans don't want that to happen. There isn't much popular support for that kind of move.
So they'd rather take, quite right, well, what you could call the moral high ground. They'd rather take the moral high ground and accept that Bayern are going to win 15 out of 16 titles, say.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people would argue, even if you did have more investment, most German clubs work on the basis that they're anti-debt anyway, so they wouldn't be matching English clubs for spending power in any case. So you may as well protect fan rights. And the other thing is, I think a lot of German fans would say, well, actually, further down the league, there is mobility. You know, clubs with very small budgets like Freiburg are in the cup final, challenging for the top four. Union Berlin are, promoted a couple of years ago now almost challenging for the Europa League. Fans do get excitement. It's just that Dortmund fans and Leipzig fans don't, because there's no title race, but everyone else does.
Mind you, there'd be a hell of a debate then, wouldn't there, if Leipzig won the Bundesliga, because then you're back to club ownership that stops Bayern winning an 11th title, as an example. So then that whole debate actually magnifies itself.
Absolutely, and that's, I think for a lot of fans in Germany, if when we do get into that situation, it's going to be a question of who they hate more, and who they'd rather see. But I think bottom line is people do see it as a problem, and they do see that something needs to happen.
Just one line on Lewandowski. Do you think he will go this summer?
I mean, he didn't sound happy on Saturday. He sounded pretty disgruntled and very non-committal, which was different to how, for example, Manuel Neuer and Thomas Müller were talking in the same period. And I think it's a danger. I think they are playing with fire a little bit. And Bild newspaper wrote today that Bayern really can't afford to let him leave this summer. And I think probably if it does come down to it, whether they get money for him this summer or keep him for another year, they probably will keep him for another year. That's what I'd do in that situation, because I don't see there's any like for like replacement that you could get, even if you get a big transfer fee for him. So I think it's not looking amazing, but you never know with Bayern. There's often this kind of cyclical thing where every few years the contracts come up. There's a long saga and a lot of debate, and eventually, whether it's Müller or Lewandowski or Neuer, they always sign, and it's another 2 years, and the stability of the club goes on. So we'll have to wait and see.